So, welcome everyone to American Consumer Credit Counseling's One Person, One Budget Strategies for Single Living webinar. We're very happy to have you here today. So, without further ado, we're going to kind of jump into our presentation. So if this is the first time you are joining us, American Consumer Credit Counseling, we are a nonprofit credit counseling agency. We're based out of Massachusetts, but we are a national organization. And our main mission really is to empower people with the knowledge and tools to really be able to regain control over the quality of their life. Part of our organization has financial education as one of its programs, and so these webinars are part of that financial education. We choose topics that we think might be of interest, and then we try to do research and find information that we can share with you to help you kind of along the path. Another part of our organization is our counseling department. And our counseling department, that's more one-on-one assistance. So if you are struggling with your budget or with your credit card or personal loan debt, and you would really like some one-on-one assistance, please feel free to reach out to one of our kind of our credit counselors. It's a free and confidential financial assessment, and they'll go over your budget and they'll look at kind of your credit, and they'll really help you out to try to figure out what some of the best options are for you to really manage your debt. And if our debt management program is the best bet, they can enroll you in our debt management program. We are also nationally certified as pre and post bankruptcy counselors. So if bankruptcy and a fresh start is really the best option for you, then you would need some assistance to know if this is the best option, and we can kind of give you some of the education around that. We're also housing counselors, so we also do reverse mortgage counseling. If you own your own home and you're over the age of 62 and you need some reverse mortgage counseling, we also do counseling with that as well. So you can see our organization is really geared to kind of give you information, whether it's whole group like this or one-on-one with our fantastic credit counselors. So you can check us out at consumercredit.com. If you want to speak with somebody one-on-one, the 866-675-0990 will get you in touch with one of our credit counselors, and they're available Monday through Saturday. So my name is Marika Vanderheel, and I'm the Community Outreach Supervisor here, so I'm in charge of the Financial Education Program, and I'm very happy to welcome my colleague Dina with me. So Dina, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Dina Sejan. I'm the Executive Administrator here at American Consumer Credit Counseling. I've been with the organization for, I'm going to age myself a little bit, but I've been here for 22 years now. So I'm definitely, this is a subject matter that I've definitely been kind of ingrained in me.
Yes, you've been immersed in budgeting and
Yes,
all of these topics for many years. So,
yes.
um, and just kind of as a side note, we are not financial advisors. We're not financial professionals or insurance, people. So this is really a general financial education presentation. And, Dina and I are both single. And we are both homeowners, and we both have had kind of life experiences that have really led us to really want to have this conversation and want to bring these ideas out. So Dina and I'll be kind of presenting some of these ideas and sharing some of our kind of professional observations and some personal stuff as well. So today, how we're going to kind of unpack this today, we're going to look at what are some of the benefits of single budgeting? What are some of the challenges? How do you kind of maximize your income? Because there's only one. How do we make sure that we have really healthy safety nets for when all of those, when life happens, when things happen? And then we're going to have some conversations around kind of things to think about when you're trying to plan for the future. But again, we're not financial professionals. And so our main goal in this webinar is to inform, support, and empower you. So we hope that you walk away with some good ideas. So before we jump into kind of the pros and cons of each of these, we're just going to kind of unpack it a little bit. So single living. So in July 2022, the Pew Research Center reported out that 4 in 10 adults are not married or cohabitating. Now, this number includes anybody over the age of 18, so that can be people who are a little bit younger. But it's so there are a lot of statistics out there around kind of single and solo budgeters. There are many different variations. So there could be people who are single who've never had children and never been married. There are people who are single who have children. There are people who were married and are now divorced, and then who were married but are now widowed. And then there are some people who are partnered, but for whatever life circumstances, they don't live in the same house. So it's two people partnered, but with two separate households. And for our purposes, really what we're going to look at is kind of single without children. And so all of the recommendations we're giving would really kind of would benefit everybody kind of along the spectrum. But there are some tax benefits and some alimony or survivor benefits that might kind of be for different people, different things. So just for our purposes, we're just going to really focus in on the first category.
So our the U.S. society is very marriage orientated. There's a lot of societal pressure within our culture to be married. Sometimes being married is seen as a sign of stability or that you've achieved some sort of success. So nobody really ever asks, when are you going to get single? Why are you still married? If you are single, you've probably heard those questions a lot. Well, why are you single? Are you ever going to settle down? And you know, you don't have to. You can be single for the rest of your life if you want to.
Right. And it's the hard part about this is that because it's a marriage-oriented society, there's a cultural aspect to it where people feel like they can ask you, so when are you going to get married? Or like, don't you want to have children? Or they can ask you all of these kind of very personal questions. But it's
Yes.
also culturally, but it's also kind of as well financially. There's a lot of benefits for people who are partnered or coupled together. So we're going to really kind of unpack that a little bit. So in looking at this, we know that people of kind of all genders who are single, whether it's male, female, or non-binary, people with a single income, everybody is going to kind of struggle with some of these issues. But one of the piece is that there is a lot of research around the gender wage gap. And so according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, there is still that gap where women are still only earning 83% of what their male counterparts will earn. So somebody who's single and a man may kind of have one budget, but then you have to kind of deduct some of that for many women. And again, it's different by different sectors and different kind of jobs, but this is the general statistic. So just something to keep in mind if you are a single woman. The other thing that is living on one income, it's also really, again, we talk about kind of financially how it's a little bit more challenging because you would think, okay, a one bedroom is going to have one price and then a two bedroom is going to be twice as expensive. But in fact, the one bedroom prices and the two bedroom rental prices are pretty similar. And that is because they're designed for one bedrooms can sometimes accommodate two people. And so it's like single budgeters, it's not as if having one bedroom will be beneficial. So that can be a challenge as well. Again, sometimes there are family discounts. So there are discounts that are applied for people there are many people within the family, but there's no family discounts for singles. And there are fewer tax breaks for singles. And as well, in a partnered relationship, the one partner may have a really good healthcare program through their employer, and they may be the person who they have a family healthcare program that the other person kind of joins, or some type of insurance that the other person falls under. For single people, you have to take care of your healthcare and your insurance on your own. So it's just kind of some of the things to realize that there are some of these societal differences as well as financial differences that kind of can stack the cards against us a little bit.
So what are the benefits of being single? So for one, you have some flexibility. Being single allows you to be able to make certain decisions without having to consider the preferences or needs of a partner. You can prioritize your own goals, whether they're career orientated, travel related, and you can really focus on learning new skills, exploring your hobbies, and just evolving as an individual. You also have the freedom to choose. So you can prioritize your career or personal projects and take opportunities that align with those goals. Um, you're free to build and nurture your relationships with your friends and family without having to navigate the balancing act of maintaining your relationships and your partner's relationships. There's also no shared debt. So there's no risk of accumulating shared debt like joint credit cards or loans, which sometimes can cause complications in relationships. And being single also removes the potential for disputes and ensures that you're in control of your financial future.
Yeah. So those are some of the benefits because everything's it's just you. So the money decisions are much more simple between maneuverability and your own choices. So yeah.
Now onto the challenges. Housing is definitely a challenge when you're renting or owning your home. It typically involves costs that are easier to navigate when you're sharing those with somebody with that provides a second income. And as a single person, you bear the full brunt of those expenses, whether it's rent or mortgage payments, utilities, maintenance. You're the sole one responsible for those. You also have limited housing options, like Marika said, that smaller, one-bedroom apartments are sometimes just as much as a two-bedroom. So you really kind of have to look at sometimes even smaller units.
Mhm.
Um, you also have no second income, so you're solely responsible for your financial needs. There's no additional income from a partner to share the burden of those expenses and your saving goals or emergency funds. It often limits the flexibility of savings and investments or large purchases. So like I said, you're really the sole person responsible. And then there's also challenges with healthcare and estate planning. Having a spouse can provide access to additional and more affordable healthcare options. You can really kind of weigh what your employer provides versus what your spouse's employer provides, and kind of weigh those options where it's just you just you sometimes only have that one option. And then you also have limited support for health emergencies. Being single means that there's no immediate second person to rely on sometimes when there is a health crisis. And typically, uh, your spouse will inherit your assets or act as a beneficiary in legal matters. But when you're single, you really have to plan for those. You have to do estate planning and ensure that your assets are being distributed according to what your wishes are.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is great because it's like the benefits and the challenges are kind of interlinked in that sense of like there's the flexibility, you get to choose, you have all of these different pieces. So that's one of the benefits, but it's also on the counter side, it's also a challenge because you have to be in charge of these things. You have to kind of know kind of what your options are and you have to make sure that, there's no shared debt, but you're the only one carrying that debt as well. So there's kind of these two are kind of there. It's a pro and a con at the same point. So, yeah. So, as Dina had said, the biggest challenge, we both kind of laughed at this because this is something, the biggest challenge is housing. And we all know this. And, housing is something that's an issue in the United States, whether you're in an urban environment or even a rural environment, rent or mortgages, it's one of the biggest expenses and it's one of the biggest stressors and strains. We need housing, but we need to make sure that we can cover those costs. And as a single person, you are the one that you're paying all of the rent or the mortgage on your own. And not only that, but as Dina had said, you're also responsible for all the housing expenses. And this could be utilities, insurance, maintenance, anything that might need to be done. That's kind of more your responsibility as a single person. Also to know that if you would like to become a homeowner, that when you want to try to apply for a mortgage and qualify for a mortgage, it can be more challenging on a single income. And so that's something you really need to think about moving into the homeownership process. Again, both Dina and I are homeowners. We love it. We've made that decision kind of eyes wide open. But for some people, renting is a better option, a little bit more flexibility within that. So just kind of before kind of walking down that path, just make sure that's the right place for you. Because housing can really impede some of your other savings goals. We have these different buckets, and if your first bucket covering the house is the most, you have to kind of lessen some of the other expenses. From a budgeting standpoint, and we're going back to kind of like some budgeting basics here, there's something called the 28-36 rule. So the 28 is you should no more than 20% of your gross income. Gross income is before taxes. So whatever you get paid as your salary for a whole year, divide that by 12, and that would be your monthly gross income before taxes and benefits are taken out. That 28% of that is your comfortable kind of housing expense as far as rent, mortgage payment, insurance, if you have a condo like an HOA. And then the other 8%, which would bring us up to 36%, is all of your debts. So that 8% would be personal loan, student loan, car loan, credit cards. And so that 8% is the rest of your debt. Now, we know that if you're a single income, that 28% is really challenging. And so you may not fall within that 28%. You may be closer to 30%, 32%. So what that means is that your other debts are less, that you don't have as much wiggle room for some of those other debts to be comfortable within that. So just something to think about for single housing. We need it, it's important, but it can be a heavy weight for us.
So I think everybody fears a possible reduction in their income. But when you're a sole breadwinner, the loss of a job really can create an immediate financial burden. Without the second income of a partner, there's no financial cushion to rely on during those periods of unemployment. Unlike a dual income household, where the other partner's income can temporarily cover expenses, a single income household lacks this backup, which makes the job loss very challenging. And finding a new job, especially in a competitive industry, can take several months. On average, it can take anywhere up to, it can take about 6 months or even longer to secure a new position. Um, so it's really important to plan, not plan for it, but to have that 6-month emergency fund.
Yeah. One of our webinars that we did in the summer, we did as a partnership with another organization, and we had a career navigator on. It was called Job Loss Survival Guide. And she talked about how many people go into kind of a job transition or a job loss, and they think it's going to be a couple weeks, and it ends up being a couple months. And so that expectation of like, I'm going to do the job search and it's going to go rather quickly. Really, you need to make sure that you have that safety net, which we're going to talk about a little bit more later. But again, so it could be a job loss, or it could be something where part of your income you were relying on overtime and they're dialing back on overtime. And so there's a job reduction. So you're having kind of less there. So building those safety nets, which we'll talk about a little bit later, is incredibly important.
Oh, sorry to jump in. We have two
Sure.
questions. One might be answered. I think you might have just answered because you're going to be going into savings later
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
But there is one in the chat. Is the 28 slash 36 rule determined by banks, or is that a personal budget guideline?
That's a budgeting guideline that sometimes it's also used by lenders as well. So it's one of those things that when they're looking at your how much debt you can comfortably carry, these are some of the standard numbers. It is both a general budgeting guideline as well as something that lenders do use as well. So it's both.
And I think I might as well just throw it out there. The other one was, can you elaborate on strategies to actually save for a goal without tapping into savings?
So we're going to talk a little bit about kind of how to set up some of these different funds for some of these savings pieces. So we're hopefully catch us later if we don't do it clearly. So. One of the things that we also talked about that was one of the challenges is this kind of like later in life. Single people are used to kind of taking care of their everyday needs on their own. So they're kind of used to taking care of everything that they need. But as we age, sometimes we're not as able to do some of these everyday things on our own. We need kind of a little bit more assistance. And so this idea that under the Family Medical Leave Act, that you can take off time to take care of immediate family, but the immediate family is classified as a parent, a spouse, or a child. So as a single person, we could take time off and take care of our parents, but as single people, we don't necessarily have spouses or children. And so there's that idea of like how do we get that help um, that support within our lives. So that's something to think about as well. Kind of what are some of those safety nets that you have in place for support as you're aging? And then single people also do not automatically have family or other, spouses to make medical decisions for them. So it's very, very important. And we're going to talk later in the webinar a little bit about the importance of setting up your estate planning as a single person is really, really important to let people know what your wishes are. So a last will is actually kind of a medical healthcare directive. What if something happens? What would you like to have done? And then power of attorney is giving, if you become incapacitated and can't make certain decisions, somebody can make those decisions for you. So again, in many cases, it would be maybe a spouse or a child, but as a single person, these are really important things to put in place. So again, we're going to kind of talk a little bit more about those in a bit.
What can you do as a single person? So one of the things is to budget and prioritize your spending. You want to set a clear budget and know where your money's going each month. When you create your budget, you also want to prioritize your savings and treating it like it's an expense, and setting aside a fixed amount before paying some smaller bills or discretionary spending. And that would lead to having a healthy emergency fund. You want to have 3 to 6 months of living expenses, and aim to have enough to cover those expenses in case of an unexpected event like job loss or a medical emergency. It's also recommended to have separate accounts for your different savings accounts, whether it's an emergency fund or rainy day fund. And you can also keep your debt low. You want to try to minimize high interest debt, such as credit cards, which can quickly spiral out of control. Pay off your balances as soon as possible, ideally, within the month, to avoid interest charges. Because if you continue spending, keeping building your debt, you're going to end up, those fees really do add up. The interest adds up and it just spirals out of control. And then you also want to plan and communicate your future wishes. So you want to ensure that you have a will and other important documents, such as a power of attorney, in place to safeguard your assets and health decisions in case of an emergency. If you have close family members or friends, communicate your wishes with them regarding your health care, finances, and assets to ensure that your plans are understood and respected when needed.
Yeah. So what we're going to do in the next part is each of the different parts is going to cover each of these 4 different areas. So we're going to touch on each of these a little bit more in a little bit more depth. So the first thing, and this is one of my favorite things, is we really need budgeting. So we really need to know where every dollar goes. So the idea is that, we don't want to guesstimate. We don't want to know, oh, I make about this much and then I spend about this much, and this is about what I have at the end of every month. As a single person, we want to make sure that every dollar we have has a particular purpose and it's going in a different place, and we really feel in control of our finances. So there are a couple different ways that you can do it. Again, people do it different ways. A paper and pencil budget, a spreadsheet budget, or a budgeting app. So try to, if you do not budget, if you do not sit down or have some method or some way of budgeting, that's a great goal for 2025 is to start off the year with starting a budget. And I used to do a spreadsheet budget. I really love the Google Sheets, which is free. They have a free monthly budgeting spreadsheet, and I used that for a couple years. But I actually realized I'm a paper and pencil person. I like to kind of have things down on paper. I like to be able to kind of write notes and kind of refer back to things. So I actually tried spreadsheet, but then I switched to paper and pencil because it worked better for me. Dina, I know you're the same. You're paper and
Yeah,
pencil like me.
paper and pencil really works well for me too. And the process of actually writing things down rather than typing them really kind of ingrains them into my head.
Right,
That's just, my personal preference. That's just the way I
right.
operate is pen and paper.
Yeah. But I do use my phone for like bank and credit card kind of apps and things like that. But
Yeah.
you may be someone for whom you like to use stuff on your phone. You'd prefer to have a budgeting app. You prefer to kind of have it all in one place. So ACCC actually knows that how challenging budgeting can be. And so we actually developed our own app and it's called Credit U. And Credit U has a free version and a paid version. But we designed it as with over 35 years of experience in budgeting. And so check us out. Check it out at www.creditu.org. And again, try it out. See if it's something that might work for you for 2025. But try something. Find some way where you're really able to keep track of your income coming in, your expenses going out, your debts, and somebody asking the question, how do I make sure my savings goals are on track? Again, these are three great ways to kind of start that. I like to think about budgeting as different buckets. So when your income comes in, I want you to think about kind of these as like four different buckets. So your first bucket, you're going to prioritize, and this may be your main checking account. This is where all of your basic needs are covered first. So housing, rent, mortgage, utilities, insurance, HOA, food. Now, when I say food, I mean grocery store food. So this would be food that you get at the grocery store and you make it home. Pet supplies, toiletries, cleaning things. So anything that would be kind of you purchase and kind of bring into the home. Transportation, car loans, gas, insurance. Medicine could be anything that you need to take as far as prescriptions or therapy. And so these are all of your basic needs that you want to make sure that you have that dollar amount, you know how much that is to cover that each month, and that you have that covered first. Once that's covered, again, you could switch debt payment and savings. It depends on which bucket you want to put in first. I like to do debt first. I like to make sure my debts are covered. So when are your payments due? So sitting down and really having an understanding of like, okay, here's where when my income's coming in, here's where it's going out for these payments. And then what kind of loan is it? Is it a loan with a low interest rate that I'm just going to pay the minimum and it's a fixed monthly payment? Or is it a credit card that has a higher interest rate that I might need to pay more than the minimum to try to pay that down? So what's your debt payment plan? Your third plan is going to be, and this is one of the most important pieces, this is your safety net and your goals. We're going to talk a little bit about emergency funds and rainy day funds, and then kind of setting up some longer term savings goals. But think about how much each month you're going to set aside into your savings. Set that up. Don't kind of make it just happen. Set it up and then automate it. Have it come directly once you get paid, have that money go directly from your main account into your savings account so you don't even think about it. The last bucket is our favorite bucket because this is the one where these are all the things that make life more interesting, more enjoyable, easier, and more comfortable. These are all our little treats, but it has to be our fourth bucket. We have to kind of know what's left over. So this is eating outside the house, subscriptions and streaming services, entertainment like movies, concerts, gaming, uh, fashionable clothing, donations, and then personal care outside the house. So there's many more other things we could add in here, but these are some of the big ones. These are the things we kind of need to decide what we're going to cut back or cut down on to, again, reallocate up into our savings to make sure we're in a good place. So expenses really are personal. And so I'm not going to tell you what to cut or how to cut, because everyone has things that are important to them, things that they value, and ways that they want to spend their time. But what you need to do with all those, that fourth bucket, all those little treats, think about what's important to you and put that to the top of your list. If you do a budget analysis and you're spending things on things that aren't important to you, mindfully begin to cut some of those out. So if you spend more on some of these less important things, this is why we need to track every dollar, then you won't have room in your budget for those important things. So
then on meal planning, some of the benefits of that is that you have the freedom to eat or cook whatever you want without considering somebody else's preferences, dietary needs, restrictions, etc. You can try out new recipes without worrying about what other people want. You can prepare quick meals. You can have a snack for dinner if you want. There's really there's no roadblocks there as far as like what you can cook. But the challenges are buying fresh ingredients in bulk, can often be challenging. There's not a lot of the smaller portions that they sell at the grocery store can sometimes be more expensive. So, you can't really kind of bulk up and buy them in bulk. And cooking for one can sometimes be it can lead to repetition. I know myself, I buy the same groceries every week, so sometimes it gets a little boring, but I know what to expect at the grocery store when I check out. But cooking for one, it can be challenging. It makes it hard to balance, to maintain a balanced diet or to get a variety of nutrients. And sometimes the motivation to cook is just not there. You come home from work after working all day, and the last thing you want to do is cook, and there's nobody there that you have to cook for. So, stopping on your way home to get takeout can be very enticing, but that can really, sometimes put a damper in your budget.
right. And Dina, we talked a little bit about like sometimes you need to kind of give yourself that ability to do that. Do the
Right.
meal planning, but know that like my personal, piece is I can do it like once a week. I can eat
Right.
outside the house once a week for myself. That's kind of something I can do. And we also talked about like that challenge of, you buy a like I have a bag of green beans in my refrigerator right now, and I love green beans, but it's a big bag of green beans. And so it's like, how many times per week am I going to eat green beans so that I don't like food waste. I don't want to throw things out. And so that's one of the challenges. I know you had, and we're going to maybe talk offline more about it, but you have found some success with some of the meal planning kits.
Yes. The thing with the meal planning kits is they're not geared for one person, but you can sometimes stretch those out. I do them. I look at the menus and see. Sometimes I do skip it, but usually if I make one of those meal kits, it provides me for dinner and then lunch the next day.
Hmm.
So sometimes with the cost of groceries, that really can be a little less expensive to do a meal kit because you're getting just enough ingredients rather than overbuying.
Yeah. It's not something I've done I don't do it, but I think it's something I want to look into just to see if
Yeah.
that might be cost effective. So,
Yeah, and they also do a lot of discounts, so it could be like you
mm-hmm,
get like a meal for free.
mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then also you want to know your social budget. As a single person, socializing is very important. So you may spend a little bit more on social activities to maintain that sense of connection, and you're not feeling as lonely, being home alone. So you might dine out a little bit more or attend different events, having drinks or going to the movies with friends, and that's okay. You just work that into your budget, but it is important as
Yeah.
a single person.
Yeah. So when I do my general budgeting workshops, one of the things I say is eat inside the house more than eating outside the house. But as a single person, that might be something that's going to be unique for you, where you may need to kind of cut other expenses to be able to have that as part of your social part as well. So, and one of the things we talked about, it was really important with that 8% of kind of other debt, is you just want to be really mindful. If your housing is taking up a big chunk of your expenses, you want to be really, really aware of your debt. And some debt is we keep track of, like a mortgage or a car loan, but high interest credit card debt, ideally, it's really good to keep your credit card debt kind of somewhere between 0 and 10%. So try to keep that a little bit lower, because again, as Dina had said at the very beginning, the more you carry balances from month to month, the more interest charges you're going to be charged, and that's less money in your pocket. So that's something, as kind of keeping your credit card debt low as a single person, is really important to keep your head above water, because you're able to kind of keep the credit card debt a little bit lower so that you can put more money towards savings. If, though, you are really struggling with your debt, that's what our organization does. So please feel free to give one of our credit counselors a call. They can, again, do that kind of budget and credit review for you to see if we can really help you get into a good place in 2025, so you feel like your head's a little bit above water with your debt. And then the other piece, when you're living on one income, you want to keep your debt low, but also because you have a little bit more flexibility with your time. So you can maybe work longer hours, can pick up, can kind of put your career first. You can focus in on your career growth and look for career job promotions, or look for kind of educational opportunities to try to kind of move up, more certifications, to try to move up for higher paying jobs. And then it could be something, you're happy with the job that you have, but you have extra time, or you have a real interest, or you have a certification. Um, you're able to do something, and it's not a part-time job, but it's something you pick up a couple hours a week as a side hustle. So you may want to, as a single person, kind of really begin to explore some side hustles. And Phil is actually going to put in our chat a copy of our resource list from this presentation. And one of the things we're going to share with you is a number of side hustle websites that you can check out to see if there are some jobs where you can pick up some extra hours. And another thing you can think about is living with a roommate. So that is a possibility. I know when I bought my first house, I couldn't afford it on my own. So I talked my sister into getting it with me. So sometimes having those alternative ways of kind of looking at kind of part-time, maybe a roommate for a couple years, to kind of get that safety net built up so you're in a good place. Yeah. But Dina, you want to talk, you have a side hustle. I mean, many of us have side hustles who have full-time jobs.
Yeah, so I was telling Marika, I have been a notary public for, oh my goodness, like 15 years now, and Thumbtack is a really good resource for side hustles.
Mm-hmm.
In this state of Massachusetts where we are, um, I signed up on Thumbtack, and I get notices all day long of people looking for a notary. And it's easy. You just have to get your certification, and then you can notarize for anyone within the
Yeah.
state.
Yeah. I can do tutoring and coaching. So there's all different things that we know how to do that we maybe can just pull a couple extra hours and make some extra money with. So something to think about as a single person.
Yeah.
And then now we're going to talk a little bit about the importance of really building healthy savings funds as a safety net. So the first one we want to talk about is building an emergency fund. So we believe that everyone should have an emergency fund. Everyone should have an emergency fund. We recommend starting with $300 to $500, because we know that if you go out and your car doesn't start or something happens, at a minimum, it's going to be like $300 to $500. So having that money set aside into a savings account is super important. The ideal goal is to work up to 3 months of living expenses. So that first bucket that I talked about, where we talked about housing, food, transportation, medicine. That first bucket, what is that cost? What is that amount, dollar amount each month that you need to cover those costs? If you were to have a reduction, job loss, if there were to be kind of a life event and you couldn't work full time as much, how much savings do you have as a safety net to cover some of those costs? And then you could go as a single person, you want to try to go somewhere between 3 to 6 months. A double income family could go 3 months and then could have that double income to kind of cover the other side. But as a single person, again, we said when there's some type of job loss or a job transition, it's not going to take a couple weeks. It could take a couple months. And so you need that safety net of that extra money. So what you want to think about is what do I have in savings right now? And what are my monthly monthly expenses? And how much money do I have that could cover a month or 2 months? How much do I have? And how much do I want to build up as a safety net? The second thing you want to think about as a savings account is it's an old-fashioned term, but it's the rainy day fund. The budgeting term for it is a revolving savings fund. So the emergency fund is fund where you put money in there and then you don't touch it. You leave it until an emergency happens. A revolving savings fund is where money goes in and money comes out. It's revolving. It keeps changing in and out, and that's okay. It's separate than your main kind of house or basic needs account. So it's a separate account. And these are for all of those unexpected expenses. So you want to create a savings account to put money aside little by little each month where you earn interest. What some of us can tend to do is we can tend to put some of these unexpected expenses, car insurance, car maintenance, birthdays, celebrations, the holidays. I don't know how many of you put like the Christmas and kind of other holiday expenses on your credit cards, but when we put that on and we don't pay that down to zero, we're paying interest. So we want to rethink some of this to build a revolving savings fund where it's earning interest and then we just tap into it when we need it. So again, this is a fund where we set aside money for when we need it. It's for all of those irregular and periodic expenses, and it's good to have a separate account so you can see it's there and it's not part of that your main fund. So
So to protect for your future finances, you want to look at how you can retire comfortably. So one of those things would be to calculate your savings at 62, 65, and 70 years old. There's some online tools like retirement calculators that will project exactly how much you need based on your age and lifestyle and inflation. So you want to aim for savings that provide about 80% of your pre-retirement income. So you also want to try to hold off on your Social Security benefits as long as you can. You can start claiming Social Security benefits as early as 62. However, claiming them will result in a reduced monthly benefit compared to waiting until your full retirement age. Now, if you were born after 1960, your full retirement age is 67. And at this age, you can claim 100% of your Social Security benefits without any reduction. And if you wait until you are 70, then that gives you your maximum monthly benefit.
mhm. And so part of the resources that we shared with you, there is a website called My Social Security. And when you create a My Social Security account, it's going to calculate the Social Security that you have accrued now and then project forward. And again, there's so many great online tools that can help you with this, but it will tell you, okay, where you are right now. If you access it at 62, here's what you'll have. If you access it at 65, here's what you'll have. If you access it at 70, here's what you have. So it will give you clear numbers as to what that will be. And again, Dina and I were talking about, a retirement age of like 65. I'm probably going to keep working into my, at least 70, maybe into my 70s. But it might be one of those things where you start to slow down. Like you have something that you do that maybe you don't do as a full-time job, you do kind of as a part-time, and you pick up certain pieces, but you kind of continue to work and you can use that money to live, and then wait to tap into some of your Social Security. Now you want to make sure you're registered for Social Security, but you when you access the money, because 70, I mean, we're living longer. Medical care is fantastic and we're living longer. And we just want to make sure as we are aging and we're getting up into our 80s and 90s that we do have the funds to take care of some of the things that we need. So again, we're not financial planners at all. And we're not kind of insurance advisors or any of those pieces. So we've tried to find some great resources and some of the links in the document that we shared that can give you some of this information. But what we're trying to really give you is just food for thought. So here's some other future planning recommendations that our research has kind of pulled up. So one of the things you want to think about in the future is your insurance. So long-term care insurance is for later in life. So this type of insurance would be something where if you are unable to do kind of daily activities and you need somebody to come in and kind of help you, take a shower or cook food or clean the house, you need somebody to help you do that, then long-term care insurance can kind of help with some of those, or with a retirement home, kind of various other things. So look into long-term care insurance, see if that might be an option for you. Short-term and long-term disability insurance, this protects you now. If you have it as part of your employer benefit, some employers put this in as part of kind of one of their benefits. You may want to explore with a tax advisor or an insurance provider if getting a separate plan for yourself as a single person might be something you want to consider. Another thing you might want to consider with the savings, there's some research out there about long-term care insurance versus a health savings account. So a health savings account is a pre-tax savings account. You must have a high deductible health care plan to qualify for this. Sometimes your employer will have this and you can sign up through your employer. Sometimes employers don't have this. You can get a health savings account with an outside company, and they will be in contact with your employer. Um, these kinds of health savings account, that's called a triple tax benefit. So because the funds are taken out before taxes, it's a tax-free contribution. There are certain expenses that are you don't have to pay any taxes when you use them for like medical care and various other things. But then also this is now being looked at as like a tax-free investment account. So some of those long-term care costs that you have might be covered by a health savings account. So again, we're not financial advisors. Check with your HR department. You can check out with a financial advisor or someone. We're just putting some of these ideas on table, things for you to think about and see what might work for you. But just some food for thought.
As far as estate planning goes, you're going to want to have a clear outline of your financial and healthcare decisions, in case you're unable to make them. This makes sure that your desires are respected, but it also helps your loved ones. It makes it a lot easier for them when they have to make these decisions to know what it is that you want. And then after death, you also want to have a plan for distribution of your assets, in the care of any dependents, like your pets, and the execution of your final wishes. And it prevents any potential conflicts and ensures that your assets are distributed as you intended. So some of the documents you would want to put together is a last will and testament, a living will, and a power of attorney. And there's some great online tools for consulting estate attorneys and other financial advisors. So you should, definitely seek those out to ensure that your documents are comprehensive and legally valid.
Yep, and in the resources, again, we've given you some of the ones that we've researched that you can see. There's a variety of different ones that you can look at. But just, that's Dina and I were talking about our New Year's resolutions for 2025, and I need to do this.
Yeah.
This is on my list. Both Dina and I we've lost parents, and so we've gone through that process of what estate planning and probate and what all we've seen this from the other side. And if you've lost anyone in your life, that realization of like, oh, okay, I want to make sure that when I go or if I need any kind of assistance, that everything's in place. So this is one of those pieces that it's on my list for 2025. You too, right?
Yes, definitely. It's one of those things that nobody wants to think about, but it's so important.
Right. It's an uncomfortable conversation. And
Right.
yeah, it's one of those people sometimes don't want to talk about it to bring it there. Sometimes people think, why are you being so morbid? But as both Dean and I have gone through it's actually if you have someone who can have those conversations and set everything up, it just lets you go through the grieving process so much. It's so much easier.
And
So.
it makes it a lot easier for the people that you do leave behind.
Right, right. And so the other thing you want to think about for the people that you leave behind is you really need to be good at record keeping. So again, some of these online estate planning will help you kind of tell you some of the things you need to gather together, bank accounts, investments, assets, insurance. An executor is someone who is named in the will to wind up all of your financial affairs after your death. If you don't name an executor, as a single person, the state could kind of need to step in and kind of take over some of that. So you want to make sure that your wishes are taken care of. An executor could be a family member, a friend, or an attorney. So it can be, but you get to choose who that is. And just making sure that in all of the policies that you have all of the beneficiaries clearly labeled for policies, bank accounts, and investments. So it just makes everything much easier. So.
Tips on staying on track. So one of the things as a solo ager, you really want to create a support system and accountability partners. It's really, really important to maintain strong social connections. They're not only vital for your emotional well-being and support, but they're also important, for your healthcare, your financial life. And so you really need to have the support of your friends. According to the AARP, 94% of solo agers say they feel like they have enough friends. The majority of solo agers feel that they have a solid network of friends to provide support when needed and highlight the importance of friendships in an aging. Emotional support is important, continuous, regular communication through calls, texts, social media. It really helps combat loneliness, provides emotional support, and they offer us reassurance in times of need. Leaning
Right.
on your friends as caregivers is important. It plays a crucial role in providing this emotional and practical support. Your friends, your accountability partners can help you manage your health care, attend appointments, offer companionship during social activities and errands. So a strong social network really does act as a safety net, and it ensures that solo agers are not isolated and that they have the people they rely on in emergencies.
And I think, one of those pieces of you can have more than one
Yes,
accountability partner. So you can have kind of
absolutely.
a wider network of people where I think the more that you become comfortable talking about these at a younger age, talking about these kind of concepts and things, the easier it will be as you age. And I think I love this picture of these two women here kind of sitting on a bench and they're figuring out life and it looks like they've got stuff figured out and they're in a good place. So we want to get to that point as single people that if we don't have a partner or children, that we have other support networks within our life.
And then you want to stay informed. There's many financial resources out there in the forms of newsletters, podcasts, YouTube, and there's some great podcasts listed here that are really worth the listen.
Yeah. And that's just that idea of just make it as part of your habit. If you have a bank or an investment newsletter, sign up for the newsletter, have it sent to your email, and just take the time to open it and just read through it because they're really designed to give you the best information and keep you up to date and keep you informed. Financial podcasts are great. You can listen to them in the car, you can listen to them in your own time, you can watch these webinars. And but it's that idea of really finding information that is good for your situation and works for questions that you may have. So again, you can stay informed, you can have an accountability partner, and you can seek kind of professional help outside the house. So it is hard being a solo budgeter, but it can be done. I think one of the biggest things, and what we want to say is all of you who've come today, thank you so much for turning up and being present and staying with us. You've taken the first step because it's that idea that you want to kind of begin to think about some of these things. We want to be careful about our expenses. We want to kind of think about our future goals, and we want to keep our debt relatively low. And so just that checkups every once in a while, just those financial checkups on your budget, building in your own self accountability and external accountability, and then again, seeking professional help when you need it. So again, we hope that this information, that you continue to stay informed, that you find support networks, and that you know that you are empowered, that you can do this. You can do this. We do so many things on our own, and we can do this. So we'll get through this together. But if you are feeling like you are overwhelmed and you would like some assistance or you'd like some kind of a consultation about your budget and your credit card or personal loan debt, please do feel free to reach out to our organization at consumercredit.com. We would be more than happy to assist you and kind of get you further down that path. And if you do like these kinds of webinars, you please feel free to sign up for our next webinar series starting in 2025. We're going to be having 2 webinars a month, one earlier in the month and one later in the month. And so our early January 7th webinar is tackling your credit card debt, which is a very timely topic. And then at the end of January, we're going to do a little bit of what we talked about now, but we're really going to do it for a wider audience of new goals. And so we want to budget smarter, save more, and we do want to stress less. But we thank you so much and you can check that out. You can scan the QR code or check out our website under webinars, and you can register now. But we're so happy that you joined us here today. We'd love to get feedback from you on the webinar. The QR code here will take you to a Jot Form survey, and I want to give a huge shout out to Dina. This is the first webinar that we've done together, and I might be
My
pulling
first
her
webinar
from.
ever.
Yay, Dina. Maybe pulling you in for more because it seemed like you were really comfortable with it. So thank you so much for joining us. If you want to get on our MoneyWise newsletter, at the very end of the Jot Form survey, you can give us your name and email address, and we will keep in touch with you. So thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope to see you back in January 2025.